So a couple of years ago, and I do apologize. I do apologize if I'm going to stumble on my words. I just woke up from a bit of a nap and everything, and of course I was waiting for the phone to ring because reasons. But anyway, a couple of years ago, IDW had revealed that they were bringing in Ninjara into their interpretation of TMNT. Now, we didn't know specifically where or when it was going to happen, basically how it was going to happen, like, what year, what event, what would the circumstances be for her arrival. We didn't know. And we speculated a lot, like, could it be could it be due to the fact that Aeroplex is gone or Aeroplex encounters her and she tells Aeroplex about New York City and about Raphael and so on and so forth, and maybe she wants to check it out and maybe claim Raphael, or at least one of the turtles, for her own. We didn't know. We didn't know. Well, it was revealed that she's going to be making her debut finally in IDW TMNT, in the weekly comic book series based on Battle Nexus. Now, Battle Nexus is an event that's been going on since the very beginning of TMNT, when it was originally under Eastman and Laird, and originally first seen in the comic book pages of Mirage Studios. It's been interpreted into the 2003 animated series, and so on and so forth. And in fact, it was kind of interpreted very loosely, I believe, in Archie comics, but done as a wrestling league, a wrestling league tournament, or some intergalactic wrestling league tournament, from what I understand. That's how it was done. Well, now IDW's bringing it, into their comics, but on a weekly basis, and it's going to be multi-dimensional. Now, of course, they couldn't do multi-dimensional in the past. They couldn't. I mean, they could have. We saw Turtles Forever proving that, was, a possibility. But when the 2003 series did it, they didn't, consider doing that at first. They decided to, save that multi-dimensional situation of different turtles interacting with each other, and different shredders interacting with each other for the Turtles Forever movie. So when they did Battle Nexus, again, when they did, they basically, didn't go that far. They didn't, decide to, take it to that level. But yet here in IDW, they're going to be doing it. And this is how Ninjara is going to show up. But now the question obviously is that fans are going to have about Ninjara, and we officially do see what she looks like, is she going to be a totally different character? Well, obviously, yeah, she's going to be different, but will she be different yet familiar? And what I'm talking about is, will she have her own, unique personality that identifies her as the IDW version of Ninjara, but will she also be, a character that sees, like her original interpretation in Archie comics, sees the error of her ways and aligns herself with the turtles, and thus over time falls in love with one of the turtles? We don't know, but I'm sure the people at IDW, the writers behind this, that actually got the rights to Ninjara, and I think the rights to Ninjara came along with the TMNT stuff. It just took time for, certain details and certain, I guess you could say, holds or rights and all that to kind of expire, even though, she was part of the purchase of TMNT by Nickelodeon and I guess now Skydance and everything. But again, people are wondering that because, that's how her character was in Archie comics. Now, could she be a total antagonist? Absolutely. Could she be just eventually a vigilante that, basically is a bit of a loner, doesn't really trust anybody, but knows what's right from wrong? Maybe. We don't know. Could she just be an all-out warrior that's like, hey, I just want to fight, but, she has honor. She has honor and everything, but she's easily manipulated. We don't know. But obviously, she is going to be different from her Archie counterpart, and everything in the book, since she's being introduced to align with the Mirage Shredder, as well as the 2012 Metalhead and the IDW version of Slash. So she's going to be a little bit, so obviously she's going to start out as a villain, just like she did in the Archie books. But again, the question is, what happens with her afterwards? Does she stay a villain, or is she going to, like I say, see the error of her ways and align with the Turtles and maybe fall for one of them? I mean, it'd be ironic she falls for Raphael, but then that would be an interesting scenario there because, basically the comic itself, the overall soft rebooted comic itself still takes place within the continuity of the IDW, or the primary IDW book that came beforehand. It's just a bit of a soft reboot. It's a soft, reset, if you will, that still takes place within the confines of that continuity. So obviously the question is going to be like, if she does show up, like if she does kind of end up a little bit, like she still has this different personality and everything and so on and so forth, that if she does basically align herself with the Turtles when it's all said and done, and let's say she ends up falling for Raphael, which we don't know yet, but if she does, that's going to, like I said, it's going to make things interesting, because if Aeroplex shows up and Aeroplex is like, hey, I'm still carrying the torch for Raphael, that will be, somewhat of a good, that will somewhat be of an interesting, if not kind of love triangle storyline between the three, because, maybe we'll find out there's a connection between Aeroplex and Ninjara. We don't know. But again, this is going to be a different Ninjara. It will be a different interpretation of Ninjara. But if there's one thing we've always noticed, in the various incarnations of TMNT, is that a character, primarily known for good or being good, no matter what interpretation they end up showing up as in whatever version, of TMNT, they always seem to end up on the side of good. Now, is that always true? No. But they always end up on the side of good in some shape or form, or some way or another. So I could see potentially this version of Ninjara turning good, turning against the Mirage Studios Shredder and aligning with the Turtles. But, that's something we'll have to look forward to when it happens. And here's the thing, I know I'm not the only fan. I know I'm not the only fan, that's thinking that believes that, is going to be a possibility. I'm sure a lot of fans are seeing, hey, yeah, this is a different Ninjara. She's got a different, look and everything, and yeah, just like her original Archie counterpart, she started off on the side of evil, but, we all know, and again, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only fan that's thinking this. They're like, we all know that eventually she's going to end up good. So, again, that's a possibility. That is a very strong possibility, going forward in the next, few days or something like that. Not a few days, but the next few weeks, excuse me. Like I said, I just woke up from a bit of a nap earlier, if you will. But yeah, basically, it's a possibility, but we'll have to see. Now, is she going to be, what is her origins going to be? That's going to be another question. Like, is she going to be very similar in origin to, to her Archie counterpart, where she lives on, or where she comes from an island of anthropomorphic humanoid non-mutant foxes, if you will? Is that what it's going to be? Or are they going to do something similar to what the 2012 series did with Mona Lisa? Because you see, when Mona Lisa debuted in 2012, she debuted, as a lizard, basically a lizard similar to what she was in the original 80s, 90s Fred Wolf animated interpretation. But instead of being, a college student mutated into a salamander, instead she's a salamander, but from an alien planet. So could that be potentially what happens here with Ninjara? Could they go down that route where Ninjara is a fox, a humanoid fox from an alien planet consisting of the same kind of species? We don't know. We may find out in the weekly Battle Nexus series. We may find out in the weekly Battle Nexus series and all that going forward. But Yeah, she is coming. She is debuting and all that. And in case you guys don't know who she is, I did do a video. I might put it up, again. I might revamp it, 4K it, if you will, to let you guys know who she is. But long story short, I bring up, her being in, her having the Archie counterpart, where she originated at, as a character. Basically, like I said, in that book, she started out on the side of evil, found out that the person she was working for was less than honorable and willing to basically risk everybody's lives, with what they were planning to do. So thus, she ended up aligning herself with the Turtles, and over time fell for Raphael because I guess there was an attraction between them, but an attraction sparked between them during the first interaction, battling each other, fighting each other, and all that. So they ended up falling for each other on the journey back from Japan to New York and everything. And she was an integral part of the team since basically, I would assume, the end of issue 20, issue 30. Issue 30, I believe. I have to go back and look, but she was an integral part of the team for at least 40 plus issues. That's right. She was an integral part of the team, pretty much a full-fledged member, of the team for about, I would say, 40, 41, 42 issues and everything. And then after that, they decided to go their separate ways, the creators and the people behind the Archie books. And the Archie books will pretty much coming to an end anyway. But there were plans to bring her back because the original idea after the Moon Eyes, because that's what it was called, the Moon Eyes saga, which caused her to leave the Turtles. The original idea was she was going to come back in the City at War or something. I think that's what it was called. I think it was called City at War. It was their interpretation of it, and she would have came back, either from the future or through some kind of dimensional portal, and she would, I guess, temporarily or permanently realign herself with the Turtles and maybe reunite with Raphael or something, or maybe she would have reunited with the Turtles, stayed with them, but maybe told Raphael, hey, look, if we're going to make this work, we're going to need some space right now, and we need to respect each other's ideals and beliefs and all that. In other words, I'm assuming that if she would have came back to the team, which it looked like she was going to, in the Archie comics, had it not been canceled, her and Raph would have been an item again, but it would have been more like, hey, well, we're going to be on, thin ice right now, and if the only way, it's going to be fully repaired is if, they respect each other's boundaries, or at least Raphael can understand, hey, you can't control, you gotta let go. Even in a relationship, you gotta let your partner do their thing, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, she was planned to come back. There was plans to bring her back, but it never happened. Unfortunately, now she did show up in an independent comic published by Radio Comics. That's spelled radio, and the comic's name is spelled Comix. She did show up there in a few issues of Furlog, Furlough, not Furlog, but Furlog. She appeared in a couple of issues there where basically the tagline was she's not hanging out with teenagers anymore, trying to make it more mature and all that for her character in her presentation, show that she became a mother, because one of the things that happened in the Moon Eye saga is she ended up falling for this other humanoid fox called Mokosha, who we find out in Furlog, in the page of the Furlog, he ended up dying. So he ended up getting killed in it, I should say. But again, that's when, she last showed up outside of the book. And then she did make an appearance during an anniversary issue, a special anniversary comic, for the 30th anniversary, which was an anthology. It was like an anthology set of stories based in the different interpretations of TMNT. And one of the interpretations was Archie Comics, and she returned alongside Raphael in that little story. She returned alongside Raphael, but she returned basically with a Raphael that was in a black suit. And no, it wasn't the Venom suit. This black suit that Raphael would wear in the Archie comics was obtained during, like I said earlier, their version of the Battle Nexus, which was a wrestling league tournament, during the earlier issues of Archie, of the Archie TMNT. Basically, I would say maybe about 9-10 issues before, she debuted. That's where he obtained it. So, he would always be known to wear that to kind of stand out from the others. Anyway, though, long story short, she had quite the run in TMNT, and as a matter of fact, her and Raphael ended up having one of the TMNT Archie comic annuals dedicated to them. Well, most of the stories were focused on Ninjara and on Raphael, so which I thought was pretty cool. And I snagged that up back in '94 when I could. And they even had, and even before that, they had an issue about, I would say, 8 issues. 80. What would it be, like 8 issues, 10 issues after? It was like 10 issues after they returned to New York, and Ninjara's now living with them. It takes, this story basically focuses on her origins, like I mentioned earlier, of her being from an island of actual non-mutant anthropomorphic humanoid foxes. So that was cool to see as well. We find out she has a brother who would occasionally show up and live with the turtles, or kind of, visit, stay over with the turtles and his sister for a while and everything, to kind of keep an eye on her and make sure she's okay, stuff like that. Anyway, though, like I said, she had quite the run in the comics, in Archie comics. And like I said, outside of the TMNT, she showed up in the Radio Comics Furlough comics, a few issues there. And we hadn't really heard much of her outside of fan art and all that until basically, TMNT's Shredder Revenge. I think that's what it's called. The, more classic 16-bit style story. Beat 'em up story that we go through time and all that, or go through these different portals and everything. It wasn't until then that she showed up as a background character, cheering on the fighters, or at least cheering on the protagonists. And she shows up in the federal Japan stage, or the rural Japan stage, alongside the villain that she originally aligned with during her debut, but then turned against because she found out exactly what he was, or she saw exactly what he was about and all that. So anyway, long story short, quite the run, and she is still remembered, and she's still looked upon very fondly by fans to this day. And obviously the people at Nickelodeon and Skydance and all that, they see this and they're realizing, hey, we got this legacy, we got this whole peripheral characters of TMNT that haven't really seen the light of day that much, and obviously they're working out deals to make sure every character is incorporated that was part of the TMNT lore, from the cartoons to the comics and all that. And thus is why we're getting our own. That's the reason we're getting an IDW interpretation of this character in the upcoming weekly Battle Nexus stories. And maybe potentially with Mutant Mayhem 2 happening very soon, maybe we'll finally see her debut in animated form as well, not just in that movie, but potentially in the upcoming seasons, because apparently the Mutant Mayhem series, the Tales of the TMNT, as it's called, I think, is going to be running for 4 seasons. So out of those 4 seasons, we might see Ninjara make her animated debut finally. But, that's up to them. But it does open the door more so than ever for her character to show up, not just because she's a background sprite in the Shredder's Revenge game, but also the fact that basically, Mutant Mayhem, is trying to basically be, in my opinion, a hybrid of everything TMNT, from characters and all that. It's trying to open that door, and it looks like we'll finally get maybe the opportunity to see her in animated form, either with the second movie or with the upcoming seasons of the series based on said movie. But yeah, Ninjara. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here and talk about the fact that she's finally debuting in IDW as part of the weekly Battle Nexus series that they're doing, and also give you guys a bit of an idea of who the character is as well, so you guys can be caught up on her history and what she's been through and why she's now suddenly back. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel. Also, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube. Also, click on the link, the first link in the description to go to my new fourth wall store. Yes, I have a new fourth wall store. Check that out. I'm just starting it up. I have one thing up there. I think you will like that. If you're a Dale and Gadget fan from Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, I think you'll like that. Also, click on the last link in the description to go to my original Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. But guys, I just wanted to come on here, give you my thoughts on what's going on and everything with the character, her debut in IDW, her history somewhat. And I will, if I get the opportunity, upload or re-upload the Who is Ninjara video I did years ago, potentially in 4K if I haven't done it already. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are. And until then, I'm out. Good time. Yep.